We are doing something extremely fun today. We are chatting with Allie Peak of A Peek Inside Gators Football and Coach Coop, crazy Hurricanes fan, about one of the biggest matchups that I can remember in the state of Florida. A huge, huge game between the Canes and Gators. This video is presented by BetUS. Let's jump right into it. Welcome back to College Football Addiction, a loaded slate of games this weekend, but none bigger in the state of Florida than Miami against Florida in the Swamp, 3:30 on Saturday. I've got Allie Peak from A Peek Inside Florida Gators Football and Coach Coop. I appreciate you guys both for joining me. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks.
So I know you guys have gone on each other's shows, and so I am certainly just trying to play catch up to what you guys are doing. But you guys interviewed each other. I would encourage, I'll link both of those videos at the end of this video. So if you hang around till the end, or if you just fast forward to the end, you can watch either Coach Coop's video or Allie's video. But you can watch them interview each other, or we can debate some things. And I can just, as a Florida State fan who is very thankful that there have been no games played yet, and we all start fresh on week one, I'm very thankful that I have you guys to debate and take my mind off of anything else that's ever happened this year. So let's start with this. We'll go ladies first, and then we'll snake this back and forth. But you guys are in disagreement, and I've heard you guys talk about it together. Who's got the advantage in the quarterback battle in this game? Allie, you can go first. I think your take might be a little more controversial to the outside college football fan.
Everything I say somehow is controversial, but
I want to hear it. Then Coach Coop can follow up.
Florida has the advantage here. Mm-hmm. I have been attacked by Miami fans on social media all week long for having this opinion, but Graham Mertz is the veteran leader of this team. He is playing at home in a place that he is incredibly comfortable at. Cam Ward, who has a higher ceiling, I will absolutely concede that to Miami fans, is in his first game in a Canes uniform, playing on the road in the toughest stadium that he will play in this season. These are two players that, I think it may come down to this. And I just think that Graham Mertz, with his experience leading this team, has the edge. And honestly, also, if you even look at their QB rating from last year, Mertz's is a tick higher. Mertz, somebody that always gets dogged for being, the check down king. He checked down about 3 times more total last season than Cam Ward did. I don't know that all of the hype surrounding Cam Ward is actually backed up by any stats. So, does he take a huge step forward in 2024? Maybe. He's got a great offensive line that he'll be playing behind. He has more weapons than he will have had, in the past. But he's still going to have to show it to me. Right now, it's just hype.
Coach Coop.
Okay, so let's build you up here at the beginning so then we can tear you down here on the tail end of it. So I'll give you this. Mertz is accurate. I can't argue that. 72% completion percentage, roughly, pushing 73. I do actually think that he will be the most efficient quarterback that Miami faces all season. But here's the deal. Cam Ward is the X factor. He is an impact player. This is a guy who has much more big play potential than Graham Mertz. Now, I do get your argument here talking about with Ward because it is his first season at Miami. It's his first year in this offense. But we also have to really look at where he played previously. I think that his surrounding cast, it's pretty obvious how good some of those playmakers are on the outside. They can lean on the run game at times if they need to, which takes a lot of pressure off of him. He doesn't have to just go out and play hero ball every down like he did at his previous school. So I do understand the argument that you're making, but I just think if by the end of the season, I think we could circle back and look at the stats, and I think Cam Ward is going to be way above Graham Mertz.
I agree with that point. I just don't think it's going to happen in week 1. I think if this game happened week 10, I would have a very different, stance on who had the quarterback advantage in this game. But it's because this game is week 1. I'm not worried about who's more likely to get drafted where. I'm worried about who is going to be a difference maker for their team game 1.
Okay. I can't. It's tough for me to argue stats because
I was gonna say, she kind of got you there.
Look, but I mean, here's the thing: Ward was at a different school, so I can say, "Wow, look at this! He threw for almost 4,000 yards last season, and that was with that team. So surely he'll throw for that or more at Miami." But time will tell. We don't know for sure. Mertz, you have stats to back it up as far as it's his second year at Florida, second year in the same offense. So I guess I'm not really arguing my point by saying this, but you kind of know what to expect out of Mertz there at Florida. All I know is that Ward is a guy that can extend plays. He's comfortable throwing the ball deep downfield while on the run. I think that Dawson is the right OC to take that the abilities that he has and harness that and utilize it best on the field. But again, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, I think I'd lean. I think you both make great points. I think I'd lean Mertz in game one. I think Ali mentioned QBR. They were very similar in a lot of areas. The reason that Ward was a little lower is because fumbles do get factored into QBR specifically, and I know that's been. I think that's a point that's probably a little overhyped. Like I think Ward is going to cut down on fumbles significantly because he doesn't have to play as much hero ball. But it is almost like a thing of we need to see it to believe it. And I made more Graham Mertz jokes than anybody when he got to UF last year. But I very much do believe in like the second year in a system for a transfer quarter. Like I think Mertz is going to be really good this year. Like I think he's a top 5-ish quarterback in the SEC right now, which has elite quarterback play. Not top to bottom, but on 3/4 of the league, if not more. And so, yeah, I'd lean Mertz game one. Ward's going to have a better year, in my opinion. Now, we've seen the wheels fall off at Miami before, and so yeah, there's a chance he doesn't. But I'd lean Alley's right for game one. Probably again, Cam could go off, and just kind of give you a performance out of nowhere on the road in the swamp, which most quarterbacks are not able to do. It is a much tougher place to play, but I think Ward will have a better year. I certainly think he'll get drafted higher. I think he's a better pro prospect. But week one in the swamp, I would lean Mertz. I actually want to go Coach Coop here because I think his answer might be. You guys might have the same answer here, but we'll see. Maybe you debate it for your side. Who is the game more important to?
Okay, yeah. So we have discussed this a little bit. It's 100% Billy Napier. Canes fans are not going to like that answer because, well, we need to win football games, and we need to win them now, right? You win 5 in year 1, 7 in year 2. Many people are going to argue you need to win game 1 to help springboard your team into a successful season. But this game for Billy, you win 6 games in 2022, 5 in 2023. It's an in-state rivalry matchup. Your Florida schedule, I say this time and time again, I do not envy you for that schedule that you have to play this season. Miami could lose this game and still end up in the ACC championship game. They could run the table on paper with the rest of the schedule. You shouldn't be that big of an issue. Florida, on the other hand, I don't want to take over what Allie's going to say. I'll just name a few of them. A&M, Tennessee at Neyland. It goes on and on. So this one, Florida needs this game desperately. So I'm just going to say it. It's way more important for Billy, but again, nobody wants to lose. So let's not downplay the importance of winning the game.
So I agree. I think this is a must win for Florida. And I think, judging what Miami fans have told us all week long, that it is more important for the Gators. I just find that so interesting because playing in a weaker conference, so we have the ability to finish with a better record, doesn't actually make you a better football team. So it seems like we're looking at almost 2 different standards here. Like, what would Miami's record be if they had to play Florida's schedule? And if it's not significantly better than what Florida is going to finish at, then are you really taking steps forward, or does your easier schedule make it look like you are?
Yeah, I think that the question around, so, let me do the moderating here, but you're taking over my job there a little bit because I do think, if you look at it, what is Miami's record with Florida's schedule? I will get right back to chatting with Allie and Coach Coop, but first I want to tell you about BetUS. If you are betting on this game, which you should be, make sure that you're doing it with my friends over at BetUS. You get a 125% deposit match right now if you use the link in my description. That is up to $2,000 on your first 3 deposits. Right now, the Canes are about a 3-point favorite over the Gators. I don't know which way you like to lean on this one, but you should certainly be doing your betting at betus.com. The best lines in the game, the best customer service in the game, and again, that huge 125% deposit bonus up to $2,000 on your first 3 deposits. Appreciate BetUS for their support. What's their over-under win total set at? Well, I think they'd be a clear underdog to Georgia. I think they'd be a clear underdog to Texas. I think they'd probably be an underdog to Ole Miss. I think they'd probably be an underdog at Neyland. They're pretty much a coin flip if you flip Florida and them. And so you're looking at like a ceiling maybe for Miami of 8-4, and that's if they run the table against Florida, against Florida State, against A&M, against Kentucky, against other teams that do have talent. LSU, I didn't mention in there. And so what's Miami's over under win total, Coop? If they have Florida schedules 6.5, maybe 7.5 at 7.5. High. It's probably 6.5 or 7.
Again, I'm trying to be very objective when talking Miami football. You're right. It's somewhere around there. That's why I said I don't envy that schedule. Maybe later and further in the season, and once this isn't all on paper, I wouldn't be as worried about some of the teams on there, A&M and Texas and those guys. But right now, going into this season, after everything we've saw, and it's hopes and dreams right now and off-season champions, I'd be scared of that schedule, 100%. I'll man up and say it.
Coop, I want to stay there for a moment. If Miami loses this game, and I know you said on paper they could still. I think Miami will be favored in probably every game they play. If they lose a couple, they might be a dog to Louisville or some Georgia Tech on the road or something. If Georgia Tech continues to win after their week 0 win, but I think Miami will be favored in every game this year. Like they certainly would right now if you could bet on any singular game. But if they lose this game, does it start to cause a little bit of doubt around Mario? You're playing against a team with a 4.5 win total. I know that it's not the meltdown that UF fans would have, but does it cause some doubts of, man, if you can't beat Florida, are you convinced that you're going to beat a Louisville on the road? Are you convinced that you're going to beat a Georgia Tech on the road that upset Florida State? Like, what are your thoughts around does more doubt creep in?
Oh, 100%. If you go around and look on the message boards and the cesspool that is Twitter, aka X, it would be mass groups of Miami fans smacking the panic button. Just because for a lot of reasons you just said, many Miami fans agree that regardless of what the schedule is, they think Florida's winning like 4 or 5 games this season, maybe 6 if they're lucky, and talking about Billy Napier getting fired. So you don't want to lose to that team. And as you said, your outlook starts to be a little more grim because we brought in the number 1 transfer portal quarterback, the number 1 transfer portal running back. So a lot of Miami fans that are drowning in the Kool-Aid currently, which is fine, be a fan. It's 10, 11, 12 wins or bust this season. So it would be hard to believe that you can lose to Florida, a team that you think is only going to win 4 to 6 games, and then you turn around and win 11 games after losing to Florida. So, yes, it would be mass chaos, not to the point of pitchforks and torches at Mario's office on Sunday morning, but fans would be very upset. It would be pretty bad.
Allie, if UF loses, they do have time to rebound, but we've talked about this, several times. They would have a chance to recover, and there's a lot of games in the second half of the schedule that you could win back a lot of favor if you are able to get some upsets, win some games on the road, whatever you needed to do, right? But if they lose this game, the path to making a bowl and in turn Napier keeping his job becomes that much tougher, because then you do look at those games like A&M and Tennessee and LSU that you thought like maybe we have a chance. They become tougher too, because you think those teams have similar amounts of talent. And so is that kind of how you view it? Not that they can't come back, but man, it's so big for Florida, because if they can't get the win against this one, how do you find your way into a bowl?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you can't beat Miami, it's harder to find wins, right? Because I think the second half of this season is murderer's row. So you're trying to get your bowl eligibility in the first half of the season. And if you don't beat Miami, do you beat Texas A&M? Do you go on the road to Mississippi State where you have struggled in Starkville historically? Are you telling me you go to Neyland and you pull out a victory against that Tennessee team? Do you get the Kentucky monkey off your back? Like, there just becomes a lot more questions. I will say, I do think part of whether or not I think they get enough wins to be bowl eligible will depend on what the game looks like. Does Florida lose to Miami and it's just the last team that has the ball is who scores, and it was just a back and forth and they both played really, really good football? I can maybe wrap my head around where they find wins later on. Do they open and make some of the same kind of mistakes when they did when they opened against Utah last year? That's going to show me that there's not the growth that we were hoping for in the discipline aspect, in the conditioning aspect, in the overall coaching improvement that we've been told this summer we have undergone, right? And so some of it will have to do with how it looks. But yeah, you lose this game, it becomes harder to find the W's looking at the schedule.
Coop, I want to come to you first on this. I go back and forth on this because I think about the Utah game in 2022 and watching that. I think on a Friday night. It was a Saturday night. We played on Florida State played on Sunday. So watching that on Saturday night, and then the Tennessee game last year. Both games where teams came into the Swamp as a favorite, and it seemed like the Swamp had. Made the difference in those games. And Florida played well too. They got out to leads and were able to sustain that. What's your take on the crowd noise? Allie, I'm going to come to you in a minute. We'll go back debate style on this one. Take on the crowd noise, and is it overblown? Is it overhyped? Certainly don't want the Florida fans in your mentions after after I put those words in your mouth. But thoughts on the crowd noise?
Yeah. Look. I'm not going to downplay the Swamp. Everybody knows that's a dangerous place to play. I have seen so many teams play Florida that I thought were quite a bit better, and they still lost playing in the Swamp. If you're a visiting team, there's some bad juju going and playing down in that stadium, or I guess for us, up in that stadium. But it's definitely a dangerous place to play. I think what Miami fans are getting upset with is, and this applies to me too, all of the Florida fans that I try to trash talk back and forth with pretty much are focusing on that as the biggest factor, the crowd noise. And again, it is important. I think it will help Florida, but that alone is not going to win you the game. So it's definitely a big deal. The Gators have won. What was the stat everybody's throwing around? 33?
Great home openers.
Yeah, since like 1990.
The longest current streak in the country.
That is a heck of a streak for Miami to break on Saturday, and it's going to be really fun celebrating that, stopping it at 33, and knowing that the orange and green is the team that did it.
So before Allie goes, I will say Florida has this will be the third ranked team in that streak, but Florida is 2-0 against ranked teams, and they both came somewhat recently. One was 2017 when a game got hurricaned out against Tennessee. So they played Tennessee first game in the Swamp, and then in 2022, we just mentioned the Utah game, another ranked team. Before that, it was it was a lot of Group of Five. I mean, people usually schedule pretty easily for their home opener, and that's not something that Miami is uncommon with doing either. But this is the third ranked team to do it.
Streak, so
yeah, so you've got a you've got a big task ahead of you, 33 in a row. But anyway, Allie, thoughts on the crowd noise?
I think, and this is something that Miami fans have said a lot this week, is that let's talk real football. Let's not rely on the stadium. And I understand what they are saying, but I think from a Florida perspective, what we are looking at, and I think Miami fans disagree at, but I think the stats on paper agree with us, is that these rosters are similar. 247 Sports ranked the talent on both rosters and gave Florida a slight advantage there. So let's call those rosters dead even, right? You start to look for what external factors could put you over the edge. And I do think, all things even, playing in the Swamp, Cam Ward's first game as a Cane with these players, that is a massive advantage to Florida.
Yeah, I think I lean, I'll say that Allie saying that probably brought me over a little bit more. Obviously, I would, if I had the around the horn button, I'd probably just give like Coop 8
Now,
points.
what if
7 here.
what if we take them out of it early though, TJ?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's as big as. So I lean.
It's an if. I know, but
Yeah,
like,
I think I lean more towards Coach Coop
out
on
for the next game. They'll stay and they'll be loud the entire Miami game. What you'll do is help Texas
TJ,
in 2 weeks.
come on over here, TJ. Come on.
I think
You
I'm
know the
leaning towards
answer.
Coach Coop on this one, but I don't want to downplay Allie's at all. Like, I agree. I was at Auburn in 2019. Florida shouldn't have won that. They played Ole Miss in 2015, and Ole Miss came as a big favorite, and the Swamp was crazy. And so I've been there for some of the times where the Swamp was just nuts. I was also there at the largest crowd the Swamp has ever seen, and Florida scored 2 points. So to me, it's not a rock solid thing, right? And that's where I kind of agree with Miami fans. I'm saying yes, it's not a deal. Like, the Swamp is the Swamp, and it's still one of the toughest places to play in America, no doubt about it. But if that's the biggest thing you're relying on, which I'm not saying it is for you, Allie, I think it's more like that's the biggest talking point. It feels like. Then I feel like you're praying that the game goes almost identical to Tennessee last year, where you get a lead, Ward's a little bit rattled early, maybe he fights back late, but they're just so far out of it doesn't matter. And that's absolutely a possibility. I don't know if that's why I think Miami or Florida's going to win. I think Florida ends up winning because maybe Ward doesn't play as well, or maybe the secondary is really the issue for Tennessee, for Miami. The Swamp will be a factor. I just don't know that it'll be the main thing. So again, I'll give like 10 points to Coop and 9 points to Allie on that in the game that I'm not actually keeping score in. You mentioned Cam Ward, Coop. So I am going to come to you, but don't be thinking about Cam Ward for your answer on this. Allie, who's your biggest X factor in this game? And you can't say the Swamp. You can't say the 90,000 people cheering in the stands, because that was your answer for the last question.
So I'm going to say Joey Slackman.
Okay.
Transfer from the Ivy Leagues. I told Coach Coop this earlier, everything we have heard out of fall camp is that he has kind of got a screw loose, and that's exactly what you're looking for on your defensive line. I don't think Florida's front seven was mean enough last year, right? I think they need that X factor guy. They need that guy who is like just going to eat your face off. And I'm hoping that is Joey Slackman. And, Florida didn't do a good job with pressure last year. They very rarely got to the quarterback. It felt like everybody had all day long against Florida. And that's going to have to change for them to be in some of these games going forward.
Coach Coop?
There's so many obvious ones for Miami that I could say, and everyone's just going to laugh at me in the comments, right? Damian Martinez, Ruben Hurricane Bain, everybody knows that name. Florida will get very familiar with him on Saturday. But I'm going to go with maybe a more, I guess you could say, outside the box answer, and I'm going to say tight end Elijah Arroyo, because this is a guy who has struggled with injuries during a lot of his time at Miami, but I truly feel like that guy is a big-time playmaker if they can just get the ball in his hands. And now that we have Cam Ward to work with instead of Tyler Van Dyke, I believe that Dawson will kind of change up this offense a bit, because we rarely threw to the tight ends last season. I feel like maybe that's something you could, even though it's a different quarterback, you could kind of bring into this game. Hey, Miami doesn't target the tight ends that much. It's not part of their passing attack. And you hit Arroyo deep on a couple of shots. I think that he could definitely be an X factor in this one.
So I'm not going to ask you guys, but I'm going to tell you my two biggest concerns for each team, or my biggest concern for each team. My biggest concern for Florida is being able to block Miami up front. I think if they don't do that, it's going to be a long night. I don't worry about Graham Mertz. I don't worry about their weapons. I think that UF has improved defensively. Allie will snicker and joke and say, well, they couldn't have gotten any worse. So, certainly they've improved, you would hope. But I do worry about the front seven of Miami kind of getting after it and making things tough. I think Napier is a good enough offensive mind, even though Florida fans kind of get pissed off with him being the OC or the play caller. But I think he does a good enough job of like making things pretty easy and pretty quick for Mertz and getting the ball out quickly. And I do think that'll be mitigated some. I think that Miami fans think, oh, we're going to sack Mertz 7 times on Saturday night because their offensive line struggles on the right side. I think Napier's really good at minimizing those weaknesses. But my biggest concern still is UF's offensive line. My biggest concern for Miami is that if they're not able to get home, that secondary is trouble, and they're starting a freshman at corner. I think that's a big deal. They certainly don't trust the guys in that room that are a little bit older. Now, I mean, they've got some all-world freshmen that, both programs have recruited well. But if they're not able to get home, and that secondary is able to be taken advantage of, then I think that's where UF can kind of exploit it. So outside of those two things, and we can do this pretty rapid fire, we'll wrap up here in a second. Is there another concern you have about your team that is not the one that I mentioned? I'll go Coach Coop first. You're not allowed to say how long it takes the bus to get home after the win or anything.
Right. Man, it feels like I'm dodging the question if I say not really, but I'm trying to rack my brain and think. I mean, you kind of already hit on that because, with Graham Mertz and him being very accurate, I would possibly be worried about even if they don't go deep. If again, Florida brought in a couple of receivers through the transfer portal, if they can get the ball into the hands of those playmakers, and we struggle to tackle, picking up yards after the catch could be an issue for the defense, as you said, if the D line's not hitting home and getting to Mertz. So not to try to copy you, it's just outside of that. I don't really have any major concerns. I give most of the advantages in each position group to Miami. So, and I have to add, if this changes anyone's opinion, Mario did announce that he hired a time management coach. So think about that. Make sure you factor that in.
I love the fact that Mario is out here changing lives. Like somebody got to feed their families because he couldn't count to 40.
There was a rumor it was me, and I wish that was true. I wish it was.
Such a great job. I grew up my whole life playing video games on knowing how to kneel the ball. I didn't always do it, but I know when I was supposed to. So, Allie, biggest concern maybe outside of the front seven of Miami, the trenches of UF.
Miami can't count to 40. Florida can't count to 11. So,
numbers.
We hired a special teams guru to come on in. You hired a time management specialist. We're going to see who benefits more from that. It's not necessarily a concern of mine, but I'm interested to see Florida's special teams. I have been kind of dogged in my stance that I don't think Florida has put the time and effort into special teams prior to this offseason. And I think it's shown on the field. I think it's inexcusable that you can be 10 games, 11 games, 12 games into a season and still sending the wrong number of people out on the field, particularly from a coach who we were sold on his attention to detail. So, but I do think, even though I don't feel like Napier has ever really admitted to fans that it was an issue, and I think he kind of gaslit them in his, defense of Florida's special teams, but I think that it's an acknowledgement that it was an area that needed to be improved by hiring Joe Houston, and that's good enough, right? That is acknowledging a problem. So I'm interested to see what kind of difference that makes. I don't need Florida's special teams to be what wins the game. I just need them to be not game changers in the negative, which we have seen, time and time again from this Florida team. So they said they fixed the problem, and I need to see that they have.
We'll wrap up here, but where can folks, we'll go Coach Coop first. Where can folks follow you, find your work? And then Allie, when he's done, where can folks find you at?
Just head over to YouTube, type in Coach Coop. I say this same thing every time, but it's probably because it's what you're going to see. It'll be me in a garbage can or me doing some kind of cringy diss track. That's just another day on my channel. That's what we do. We're all about having fun and college football fans just hanging out, talking football, having a good time. But that's where you can find me.
You can find me on Twitter at Allie_Peak, P-E-E-K, or you can find me on YouTube, A Peek Inside Florida Gator Football.
As a Seminole, I watch everything both these two do and follow them on Twitter and everything else. And they really are for as much as a rivalry is, like they really are plugged in and do a great job. So if you're a Miami fan, a Florida fan, or a fan of any, I mean, you probably already know them if you're a fan of those two, but if you're a fan of anybody else, go check them out on YouTube. I'll link both in the description. I'm not going to ask a score prediction. I'm not going to ask who wins. They both pick their own team. But if you want to know their thoughts on why and what the score is going to be, you can click either video on the screen right now to check both of their videos with each other out today. And remember, you can check out more content by subscribing here at College Football Addiction, and appreciate BetUS for their support.